All right, thank you for joining us. Thinking about it, I think this would technically be podcast number one. The E3 thing was more of a two-parter kind of thing. Our podcasts are kind of be random ass topics. We're just gonna blabber on about them. Usually shorter than that. Usually just one part. So, I guess welcome to podcast number one, and thanks for listening. So, pretty much we were uh, always chatting about random ideas and just figured we'd put them down on paper and blab about them even more than we already do. So, um, I've got the captain here with me again.
Hello, everybody. The captain speaking. I'd just like to remind you before we start that just in case of emergency, make sure to finish your beer before finishing off any children's, elderly, disabled, or any other bitch's beer on the way down. Otherwise, it should be a smooth sailing straight into complete and total idiocy in about 2 minutes or so. Have fun.
I'm gonna swing in and add a note that can open was like 10 out of 10. That was like stone cold Steve Austin level can opening. Like, he would have been proud of that one. You would have got a hell yeah for that one.
I've been sitting here for 3 minutes with a good grip on the tap. I even got leaned in to get perfect on my Yeti for it. So,
All right. Sounds good. So, why don't you introduce our topic and go ahead and rattle off your first one or couple, however you want to do it.
all right. So, everyone, and to an extent with our E3 Lollapalooza or whatever, we've discussed and other people discuss the classic, like, what games do you want to see remasters or remakes for? Well, this time we're kind of taking a trip down nostalgia lane, putting on the rose tinted glasses, and we want to pull some of like what might be a little offbeat, not quite your first choices or the first things that you would hear people say for remakes, or putting a bit of a different twist that isn't always brought up for maybe certain more popular series or certain games that people would like to see but don't always think of some of the more interesting minutia based on their history. And with at least one that I have down the line, you'll hopefully get where I'm coming from with that.
Mm.
So, we're pulling from games that we may have owned or may not have owned throughout the years from the time we were little kids. Games that we might have rented and spent some time with and then liked so much that we had ended up buying, or that friends had and we spent so much time with that we might as well have bought the game, probably spent more money at our local video rental stores on them than what it would have cost to go to, at that time, either Walmart or Kmart. Like, usually, actually, back in the day, I got more games from Kmart than Walmart. Anything like that. So, my first one that came to mind, and the genesis of this came from an offbeat game that I'm glad got its remaster, the SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated. Game that I played a bit of, not as much as I should have or want to, but had massive respect for. Wouldn't exactly be your first thought off the bat for like a platformer that should necessarily get a remake, but it had such a massive fan following that THQ Morgan was like, yeah, we'll throw a bone and we're going to remake that. And apparently, from what I've seen, I haven't got to play the new Rehydrated yet. Did a damn good job on it. And it got me thinking, like, what else could be pulled from that? And this first one, very nostalgic to me, would fall into a bit of the same vein. If I remember correctly, it was made by THQ. It's a property of a, well, I was going to say property of a property. It's from a series from Nickelodeon that was at one point as, if not more popular than SpongeBob when they were both on the air at the same time. And it's special to me because it was honestly the first PlayStation 1 game that I had ever owned, was able to call my own when I first got my PlayStation. I very distinctly remember, like, my family, like the extended family, we would have a family Christmas and we would have a more private, normal Christmas where it would be like my immediate family, myself, my mom, great uncle that we lived with, and then like my grandparents. We would get together on Christmas Day, but we'd have a more extended family Christmas where cousins, aunt, and uncles would all get together. Sometimes anywhere from a couple days to a week before or after. And I remember we had family Christmas that year, a few days beforehand, and there was one present that I wasn't allowed to open from my aunt and uncle. From my, yeah, that was like, in hindsight, you could very clearly tell that it was a wrapped up jewel case.
Yeah, yeah. This is very suspiciously shaped like a PS1 game.
Wasn't putting two and two together, although like I was gearing up and I wanted a new console. At that point, like I had for a very short time, and this is a whole fucking tangent story that I could go down some other time about the first Genesis that I had, and I had played a fair amount on friends' SNESs and NESs, and played the PlayStation, and I loved looking at the PlayStation. It was a whole different ball game. Obviously, that was when they were really bringing 3D into its own. And the game that I got to round it all back around was Rugrats Search for Reptar. A game that in some ways is still very nostalgic and holds up, and in other ways, comparatively speaking, doesn't anymore. But is a game that I feel like could really, really hit those heartstrings for a nice nostalgic remake.
Mm-hmm.
Because they took the time to, when you first boot the game up, they took the time to remaster, well, not remaster, but remake in engine in 3D the intro to the Rugrats TV show. They built the entire Pickles household in 3D, basement, main floor, upstairs, every room, garage, out back. Like the only place you really couldn't go was like out the front door into the front yard, but they were like never out there in the TV show, so why would you care?
Right.
Multiple other places that either showed up in an episode or two, or bits and pieces were alluded to and maybe took creative liberty with for the game. And for the time, it looked good. Its biggest downfall was its control scheme, but when that game came out, it predated the original like Japanese dual analog controller and then the venerable DualShock 1 controller. So there's only so much they could do with what they had available and wanting to make it as accessible as a game as possible for a younger audience. And I remember pouring so much time into that game. One, because it was the very first game I had, and two, because it was amazing because it was in 3D. Myself and my friends all loved Rugrats, and that same particular winter that I got the PlayStation and got that game, our Christmas break in this area ended, but basically for the month of January, because of repeated snowstorms, I think we were in school for all of maybe 2 full days out of like 4 days that they attempted to open the school and had to send kids home early.
Yep.
Or thought about bringing kids in. Like I think there was literally one day where they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna go and attempt it," and they had like half the kids like bust in, and you shut it down, and we're taking kids home before like even like the quote unquote like walkers or the kids that were being dropped off by parents could even go in. But I digress on that. So there was a lot of extra time that I had to spend with that game, and we beat it so many times. Like we thought it was so cool, finding things we thought were like, and they were somewhat hidden extras. Like in in the mini golf mission game, there's one hole where there's like pyramids in the mini golf course, and you can actually go into the pyramids and get extra reptar bars. And there was so much to it that it was really fun as a kid. And the last few times that I've over the years popped it back in to play the original PlayStation or my PS2, I still enjoy it. I do not like the controls as much as I used to put up with them, but I think it would be a really good game to get that remaster treatment. It's a property that Nickelodeon is still using to an extent and pulling money off of as evidence with their like Nicktoon kart racer games, which apparently they just announced a sequel to the one they put out like I forget if it was originally like 2 or 3 years ago they had put it out, which was as an aside was an okay game, but a little bit shallow in what it had for content. But
Especially
pretty
when it's on the Switch and you got a powerhouse like Mario Kart out, it's kind of hard to compete.
yeah. But yeah, as an aside, there, like I mean, it's still a property that they talk about and that they use. I think they could make some money off of it, and I know it would definitely pull my heartstrings if they said, "Oh yeah, we're going to remaster this and put it out." If they did in a collection that included like Rugrats and Paris and a few other ones that were out there, which were good, but just not as nostalgic to me.
The one request I would have, if they put that out, the fucking game disc has to be orange, or else I'm gonna be very upset. How
See,
would?
that would be cool. That would be funny. The thing is, like, I'm trying to think. I don't even think with like parts for like Game Boy or Game Boy Advance. I don't think they ever pulled the same trope of using like the orange slime color
I don't think
of
they did.
the Nickelodeon logo bits like they did for classic VHS tapes, which for kids in the audience were the predecessor to DVDs, which were the predecessor
Yeah,
to
right.
which was the predecessor to online streaming, which were literally cartridges that had magnetic tape in them that were, were able to be programmed basically to have audio and video movies on them. If you ever see a classic movie or shot of like a video projector that has like big round discs with tape on them, think of that except inside of a smaller rectangular plastic container that basically acted as a protective box for it. It went into a machine the size of an original Xbox One and would play movies that you would see on like in theaters or now you'd see on TV like on HBO or sometimes on other channels like Turner channels and stuff like that, but in the US. But yeah, and of course, as you guys can see, this is already a bit more unstructured. And full disclosure, this is pretty late at night slash early morning, so we're already out of it. And as you can hear from the gag, I've cracked a beer and I've had a few beforehand, so there's some real interesting rambling going on. But that whole thing was the genesis of it. I was watching a review on the rehydrated game. I was
Mm-hmm.
already hyped up on it, missed the release date, was a little pissed off, and I was like, fine, I'll watch a review on it. I forget which reviewer it was offhand. I apologize. I was like, oh, this they got me thinking about Search for Reptar, and it was just the genesis for this particular idea, which we've touched on before in some ways. But I was like, you know what? Let's form it together and let's see what we can do here. So that was the genesis of it, and you seemed pretty hyped about it when I brought it up to you. So let's see what popped into your head around the first two here.
um, some of mine don't have nearly the detail or backstory that your first one would.
That one was the most
Um,
special for mine, to be fair. Like
right, right.
I have memories of every one of these, but or reasonings behind them at least. For well, I'll get to it, but yeah, that one was the most special.
For me, I think that obviously you got to go off of the trope of your first game. Um, my first PS1 game was Test Drive 5. It was a solid racer. It was pretty good. I mean, it'd be hard for them to survive now. They'd have to do a hell of a lot to stick out with Forza, Need for Speed, and everybody else out there right now. But, I mean, the soundtrack was fucking perfect. So, they could just re-release the soundtrack for me, and I'd be happy. I peppered in a few other kind of smaller ones. I wanted to go I wanted to strictly stick with stuff that not the whole internet's raving about. Obviously, everybody wants like Vice City and all this kind of stuff, which I do too. I'm not saying I don't,
Right.
but I wrote down some of the stuff that I have played and I've told people that I've played and I've gotten weird looks for. So, the newest one on my list is fucking Fatal Frame 5. And if you ask Mr. Captain here, I talk about this goddamn game at least once a week. And
I think a point where I don't want to say you necessarily grew up, but something changed where it went from talking about one of the previous Fatal Frames to you went on a bigger tangent of talking about Persona 5, then you went to Fatal Frame 5.
yes,
Soon, it's got, like, there's something about like the fifth game in a series that just gets you going.
something like that, yeah.
And I mean, not that any of them are bad games by any means; they're great games. Give them a try, but it's just something about the number 5 that really seems to get him. So,
It's like fifth, like you should fucking know what you're doing. It's either gonna be an amazing game or you done fucked it up a while ago. For me, Fatal Frame 5 was kind of like the fucking unicorn of the whole bunch. It was only released on the Wii U and only in Japan. You can get it now on the Wii U marketplace, but good fucking luck with that because that's been closed down for years. Um, pretty much, I just want them to remake it so that I can fucking play it. Like, that's the whole reason. It looks cool. It's the newest Fatal Frame, so it's got like modern-ish graphics. Obviously, not like right now standard, but it still looks pretty good.
yeah.
And everything about it, I'm super interested in. I've always loved the series. 2 and 3 are my favorite. One was a little bit dated, but I just mainly just want that to be remade so that I can play it. I don't have any nostalgic value on it, except for it has an amazing looking cover on it. So hopefully they keep the Japanese cover. And the word cover is a spoiler for one of our next coming up episodes, just to let you guys know.
Yeah, we wanted to spitball that out, thinking of honestly doing it tonight, but we'd like to make it a bit fancier, have some things in line, think it through a little bit more so we can maybe show off some of the artwork to you guys so you're not just staring at some random bullshit on a YouTube video and or at least give you a reason to maybe take a look at the video here or there instead of just listening to us, which listening is fine and dandy, but with something like that, you're probably going to want to have some reference material.
Right. um, that's the only one on the list that I haven't played. I kind of just rambled some shit down that I was thinking of. Next one down for me, I played the absolute shit out of it on PS2, and this whole franchise died 2 generations ago, I think. I don't think there's been anything since. Um, the only one I've played in the series is this one. I want another Army Men RTS. I really super enjoyed that game. I thought it was really neat that you ran an RTS and you was super small and you could use like a shoe for resources or like a TV remote would be plastics like resource stuff like that. I just thought that whole idea of it was kind of cool. It kind of reminds me of the game Grounded that's coming out soon, where it's like a Honey I Shrunk the Kids thing. I just think that whole dynamic was cool in like a war setting like that. Being able to hide, take cover in, something super small, something like that. I just think that'd be something neat that hasn't been touched on in a while, and I don't even fucking know who would own Army Men right now. If anybody, it might just be in fucking video game limbo.
I'm looking right now because that was something that I can't believe I didn't even think of because I used to love playing the Iron Man games, especially back in the PlayStation era. Apparently, like for at least for publishers right now, the last publisher for whatever was put out, which I think they put some out on like mobile. The last publisher was 2K Games,
Huh.
so they might very well own the license to it. I can't say for certain, but because it's bounced like from developer and publisher of the 3DO company and Global Star Software both did developing and publishing. Then it switched off where developing Twistbox Games did something in 2008 for mobile ops, and uh, Neotl or Neotel. It's like Neotl, and the E has a what's called a cedilla over the top of it. They did Army Men 3 in 2013, whereas Connect2 Media published Mobile Ops, 2K has a present publishing on it, and Neoto Empire did their own publishing as well. So I don't know. I like that's literally just pulling up a quick Wikipedia thing on the series, looking at that. Like I'm assuming 2K probably owns the license right now.
Right. Right. Because they used to be Global Star Software. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Global Star and it was 3DO Company, and
Huh. Well,
yeah, it was originally 3DO Company. Like I remember, I think even through like Sarge's Heroes, 3DO was still on the covers and stuff for it. Like
yeah.
a great series of games, and I know in some way, shape, or form there is something out there for them, but nothing even. I would say remotely a big release, not to downplay mobile stuff, but nothing even on mobile that I've heard much of would be like, oh, you got to check this out.
Right.
Not saying it would be the same kind of gameplay, but in the same kind of popular vein as things like Angry Birds, Flappy Bird,
Mm-hmm.
Flip the Bird to Someone, Pokemon Go, the Walking Dead Pokemon Go kind of game, the Harry Potter Pokemon Go kind of game, whatever. Like,
Yeah, yeah. It's just everything's fucking Pokemon
all,
Go now. What the fuck?
I've played, I've played all of those on the side, and they're all good games. I just can't think of exactly what the full names for those two ones
Harry
were.
Potter's probably Wizards fucking something. That's probably like literally the title. Harry
Wizards
Potter,
Unite.
Wizards fucking something.
You actually, yeah, it's Wizards Unite, and
Yeah, I figured it was something.
like the Armament, or not Armament, but the Walking Dead one's something like the Walking Dead game. But as an aside, like yeah, like compared to even some of those, like haven't heard that much about the Armament series, but I'm assuming it's yeah, obviously it has to kind of still be out there. And that would be a great series in general to be revived or to have.
It's just been so long, and there's nothing else like it right now. I mean, there's obviously shooters, but just like the world that it takes place in,
Yeah,
there's a lot they could do with that.
the aesthetic of it, and from what I remember, some of the humor and stuff around it, even in just some of the advertising, which advertising in the 90s, like mid to late 90s and the early 2000s, is different than what it is now.
Oh god damn, yeah. Spiked hair surge and in your fucking face.
Like, I mean, there's parts of both of us that are like holy shit, how'd they get away with that? And there's other parts of us that are like, yeah, they should just probably just fucking put words out there, like, so, like, great games. I do think they really should be remastered. I'd like to see something new out of them too, as an aside. And then The other two that you had brought up, like the Test Drive series was always good, and I think at least for a nostalgia fest, like remastering the first four or five of them, I hate to downplay the remastering process, but you'd think for something as confined as that is even compared to like a old school shooter or an old school RPG or something like that, like a racing game with X amount of cars, X amount of tracks, like even if they combined all of the tracks and cars together, like it'd be a great experience. And I doubt that it would take that much manpower or money that they would really stand much of a risk of losing out on it. And they could
Mm-hmm.
probably use it as a jumping point to release a new game after that.
Here's a
Double prizes.
here's a fun fact. The company that owns Test Drive right now is still making racing games. They make the WRC series.
Yeah.
So, they're still in it. So I'm waiting on my fucking Test Drive game. Fuckers.
And there's definite DNA swappage between those two games. I mean, and when you really think about it, not just the you have four-wheeled vehicles that go vroom vroom. Kind of some of the stylized bits and pieces of how the racing mechanics would go. Kind of that old school racing mechanic that you'd see from the original Test Drives and the first couple Need for Speeds and stuff like that. Like there's a distinct style to it when you really look at them compared to some of the newer ones, and not for nothing, more rally focused games that have more, shall I say, confined way of playing, like not branching off too much, not being too arcadey or too
Mm-hmm.
out there. Like you got a fucking purpose. Your purpose is to race. You got to
Right.
do X, Y, or Z. It's a more interesting courses, but more confined courses, usually based off of more realistic actual courses. Like there's a DNA lineage there for that is kind of, I don't want to say not used anymore because it is used, but it's not as strict and straightforward with that as what you would
Mm-hmm.
see in like a rally racing game. So, and it is probably a stretch to compare and bring those two together, but just offhand, it feels a little. They feel kind of intertwined there.
Yeah.
And being in the fucking racing game market, like, yeah, they could probably pull some assets and jack slap something together that could be a $30 special for a new game in the series that might make everyone cry. This is fucking bullshit. But at least it'd be something. And for some of these old series, like the C sequels or get remasters or whatever, like so kind of at the point where even if it's half-assed, at least it's something. At least someone's thinking something at some point, even if it gets fucked around by bureaucratic bullshit or whatever.
Right. Oh, for me in it too. I'm gonna. I don't know. I might get hung at the stake for this, but it's for me. It's the best soundtrack on PlayStation One. Number two is Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, so I ain't gonna leave that out. But for me, this one was the best. That was got me into a lot of the music that I still listen to. So that was a pretty big part of it there too. Was just the licensing that they got for the music on there was absolutely top notch. The one on the end of my list here is a funny one because I've met maybe 3 people in my life that have played this game. But apparently it has a huge cult following. I just don't know who the hell they are. It's currently being remade, but it's currently been being remade for 5 or 7 years, something like that. But I'm still gonna put it out there. Um, Either anything at all or come out with fucking Time Splitters Rewind. Like anything you want to do with it, I'm fine. Make it playable on the new systems, even if you don't up-res it. Time Splitters Rewind is a thing still. It's kind of, they're like cramming all of them together in a way. Kind of like a Master Chief collection, but no menus in between the games, just kind of all crammed together, like the best of kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That was just that was my Halo. Since I've owned original Xboxes, but never at the time that they came out, way later down the road.
Right.
That was pretty much my Halo. That was my first person shooter, my go-to first person shooter. I had the fucking controller extenders on them. I had the multi-tap on them so that everyone could actually sit there and all fucking play together. And yeah, that was my go-to. For me, it was that fucking map editor. That still like sticks with me. That's part of the reason why I like the one in Gears 5 so much, because it's a lot of that. It has that same kind of, it's a way watered down version of it, because back then that was an insane map editor. That was on the level of things you don't even see today a lot of times, outside of,
Oh
PC and
yeah.
stuff like that. You could do lighting, strobe lighting. You could do all kinds of crazy stuff with even the lighting, enemy types. You could have stronger enemies in different rooms. Like, there was a lot to it. And I mean, what, half of the team was the fucking Perfect Dark and Goldeneye team? It was something like that. It was quite a bit of it came from Rare. And quite a bit of the guys that worked on that team worked on the two fucking biggest multiplayer shooters ever made, pretty much, because they started so much. And you could feel it. It felt a lot like, obviously, it was a lot easier to control because you didn't have the one analog stick of the N64. But there was a lot of Rare love in that game, and it just kind of hurts my feelings that that company folded down. I'm happy that somebody's still trying with it. I just hope that they either meet their goal and are able to put it out, or somebody just comes in and gives them the money for it. You know, some bigger company or something swings in. They're like, here's the money to finish that project, because that's a huge nostalgia one for me. Specifically, Time Splitters 2. That's the one that I have the most time in. I don't even remember how I fucking got it. It's weird. Like, everyone listening to this, anyone who will ever listen to this, has to have the same thing that me and the captain here have. Where the fuck did we get half of these games we own?
Yeah.
Where did
Yeah.
we get them and where did they go? That's another thing too. I don't remember buying Time Splitters. I think I just woke up and it was there one day. Like, I don't remember it at all. It's so weird.
Like I remember a handful of games that I got for different holidays and stuff, like Search for Reptar,
Right.
and a handful of more infamous ones like the fucking Tarzan game for the PlayStation, which in general wasn't that good, but I got a fucking faulty copy that to this day, no matter what I put it in, something is wrong with it right around the like the sector on the disk that verifies the thing, and it just won't boot worth a shit. Like if you're lucky, you can get it like a basically a splash screen again, and just random things like that. But a good chunk of my games, like I don't remember getting whether it was after the fact, like picking them up in the last few years. Like I remember the vast majority of them, but I know which ones that I got from that or got from like I get a retro video game subscription thing sent to me. Like I remember those. I don't remember where some of these come from. I remember spending more time with rental versions of some of the games I have, and still don't know where the fuck I got some of these. A handful of them I do remember random things about, but not as much of them as I should. And there were some games that rightfully I felt like I owned that I never did. That raises a whole other question, like how like Inkfish and I, like we didn't grow up rich by any means. In some circles, we might have been close to middle class, but generally speaking, we were redneck, didn't have a pot to piss in some regards, living life the best we could. How in God's name did we have so much time in rental games in general and in certain games, and no one ever in our families managed to realize, like, we spent so much money on this, we might as well just keep a hold of this game, or we should have just bought this game, or why are we going every weekend for them to rent something else when we just bought them this other game, even if they bought a piece of shit that was on clearance for like holiday season or something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Here's looking at you again, Tarzan, a game that I never wanted and don't want to replace. It's better for the story of it not working.
Okay, this just in. Um, Test Drive Unlimited 3 is in production. All
Well,
right.
there we go. There's
All
something to
right.
test drive.
I'll
It's
believe
not
it when I fucking see it.
it's not a remake or a remaster, but at least it's life in the series. And we will say, like, yeah, while we want to see remakes or remasters of these games, seeing anything from a series is better than nothing.
Trust
And
me, if you put Fatal Frame 6 on the PS5, after I'm done crying, I'll go fucking buy it.
yeah, and then there are certain things like the next game that popped into my head. It's another gonna sense a bit of a pattern, you guys, but this is another PlayStation platformer game that spent a little bit of time renting, but it was more playing at one of my cousin's houses and borrowing from them. And I never even got that far into it for the longest time. And I played it years down the road and got farther into it, and I still liked it. It's Bugs Bunny Lost in Time. Another licensed game that could have been hit or miss, and it had even better controls than Search for Reptar. I thought it was a genuinely good game. I still do think it's a pretty good game, and it would be cool to see it get the nostalgia trip remake treatment. Like, there is still obviously stuff out there from Warner Brothers properties. Like, I see a decent amount of time when I'm watching videos on YouTube or Facebook or what have you, pop ups at least for mobile games that have the Warner Brothers assets in it, like Taz and Bugs and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything in quite a while for like a full fledged game. And they might as well ride the nostalgia train because there are people that are out there talking about that game. There are reviews of it, and whether it's more like straightforward looking at it as a review or with rose tinted glasses, like going back and like, was this game as good as I thought it was? And generally speaking, like everyone will admit, like, yeah, it's got its flaws, just like any sane person would about any game. Nothing is perfect. Nothing and no one is perfect in general. But generally, like, they look at it as being a good game, and anytime I would see it pop up and I would watch those videos, there'd be some written reviews. I would just think of like, why hasn't anyone remastered this? As
Mm-hmm.
far as I could tell and see, unless I missed something, like no one's even thought or attempted of it really. Like there might be some random former dev or someone from whatever company holds the license for it at this point that might have done like an AMA or a random response to a Twitter question or something where they might have teased it a little bit, but nothing substantive has ever come along for it that I've seen. So
My guess would be licensing. Because it is a property like that, same reason GoldenEye and shit will not be on the N64 fucking remake unless they pull some major strings. Because you're fucking with, like, movie rights and shit.
yeah, well, like I said, Warner Brothers still licenses out all those likenesses. Like, yeah, therefore, is for money, just like any company is, especially any big company that plays off of nostalgia.
Right.
I don't see why they wouldn't go for it. I think they could have some smart money in it if you pick the right studio to do a remaster or redesign or reimagining of it.
I could see it. Yeah.
Like a lot of these, I think would be bit of a long shot, but again, this is our nostalgia, and we can put some justification to it if we want to. Otherwise, who the hell cares?
That's fair.
One of
That's
the next ones that I came up with, and this is a bit older on, like when it came out, I think it would have been 2000, somewhere between 2001 and 2003. And I apologize, I don't remember the exact year. It's probably 2002, right square in the middle. This was a PC game, and not that if anyone couldn't tell from just generally my god awful looking voice that makes me sound like I'm ready to give you Ben Stein's money. But I'm a bit of a nerd, a bit of a Trekkie, and there was a Star Trek game called Star Trek Bridge Commander that I just absolutely loved. And I remember playing it at another buddy of ours' house, which hopefully we'll get that idiot on a podcast here sometime.
we'll drag them out.
He had a computer that could play it at the time. Mine just barely couldn't. I mainly didn't have hard drive space for it. And that was back in the day where some of the fancier computers that you could, still in the early 2000s, some of the fancier computers that you could get like OEMs and everything without doing upgrades to, generally you'd be lucky if you got like a 20 to 60 gig hard drive.
Yeah.
Mine had the specs that it could still play it at minimum settings, but my computer was a few years older. It was an E-machine, which is notorious for being crap, although surprisingly, that damn thing actually still works to this day. And maybe down the road, either on this channel or again, I'm still thinking about bringing myself to life with my own channel. Maybe I'll show you guys that old thing. But I didn't have a lack of, didn't have hard drive space for it for the longest time. And when I got the copy of it, but I had that game and I worked over it and I read the manual and looked at the artwork and was reading of it on my dial-up internet. And I'd go over to our buddy's house and I'd play it because it was so cool. I was just getting into Star Trek at the time, and it was such a cool game. He took command of a they had a selection originally of, let's say, between the different factions, there might have been about 12 to 15 or so ships that you could play as, and you would fly them around like it. Like you could do a free-form multiplayer mode where you set things up where you could be like you and X amount of allies versus X amount of enemies, and there was a story mode where you did certain objectives too, and you'd be the captain. You'd fly it around. You could either tell your crew members, your tactical, your helm, science, engineering to do X, Y, or Z, or you could go into the menus and you could manually adjust them. You could fly the ship using keyboard controls. You could, with the button presses, you could choose when you fired your weapons. And it had such a following that it got for years fan updates to it. You can still find the remnants of it online, although one of the big hubs and websites that was used for it was on a company site that the company just ended up basically going tits up eventually. I forget exactly what the site was, like who the company that had it was, but I think they might have been associated with FileFront. I don't know if it was mainly a FileFront site or if it was associated with it, but like people made mods for it. They added ships into it. They brought other series into it. You could have a Death Star as a star base in that you'd be fighting against, or there could be an ally sitting in the system. Battlestar Galactica and Pegasus could be in there. The Futurama uh, delivery ships, whether it was the Planet Express ship that they flew or the classic. Well, someone built the classic one that the previous crew had from the one episode. Like there was love for it. There was custom new designs, some of which are at least partially licensed now by Paramount and Viacom. Have Blood DNA and a somewhat successor game called Star Trek Online. And you can get some of your fix obviously through that game. But the love that this game, like Bridge Commander, had gotten beforehand, the unique nature of it, and having online multiplayer, but having a single player experience that couldn't really be tweaked or interrupted too much by outside player sources or anything. That it was it was damn good at the time, and it's very nostalgic to me still. And it would be cool to see it remade or more of it being brought forward because the storyline's pretty much been left to lie. Like I think it would be cool if, at the very least, if the team at a perfect world brought the storyline for it forward as a season or two season arc in Star Trek Online.
Mm-hmm.
It was just nostalgia. There's still people making mods for it to this day. Not nearly as much, and it's a lot more disjointed since the main site or two pretty much went down around the same time. But it's still out there. Like the big ass fucking repository of stuff if you know where to look. And if you're even remotely interested in space combat, ship combat, whether you like Star Trek or not, because of the sheer birth of IPs and custom stuff that is in it. And even if you just like the kind of technical aspect of it, because there's a lot of add-ons and stuff that were built for the game that, to this day, because it was a hodgepodge of shit, it can honestly beat itself up on my current gaming PC, which is a damn good PC. It's not top of the line, but it's definitely up there. Like I pride myself on it. It could still beat it up because it's a hodgepodge of stuff, but they did so many upgrades. Took and changed, like added resolutions they wouldn't even have really thought of being possible at the time. Resolutions and frame rates. Custom scripting, mainly using Python to add in wholly new textures and lighting and damage effects. Writing in custom scripts for things that you would see in some of the Star Trek TV shows where certain ships could split apart, whether it was for tactical use or safety use. That wasn't originally in the game. The game couldn't comprehend initially doing that and being able to bring the pieces back together.
Mm-hmm.
Custom scripted that in. Custom designed and scripted out, like I said, new ships and set designings because there was a view that you could have where you're literally sitting in the captain's chair of your starship, and there was originally just two different bridges that you could choose from. Tons of custom bridges added in. The ability to actually go and walk around the bridge and get closer to the different consoles and stuff. And mind you, that it wasn't high def or anything, but it was still just a neat thing to be able to go and look around and get a good view behind you and see the whole thing. There was so much love poured into it. And while I would never claim to be a great modder or designer by any means, like I put a little bit of love out there with it. I've helped make certain scripts for different vessels or make custom versions of them to better suit different time frames and stuff. And it was a lot of time, a lot of, at the time, pain from having stuff not work right. And, first world idiot problems like for a middle schooler or an early high schooler, but nostalgia is deep there, and it's probably the second most personally impacting video game from my early years. First one
Mm-hmm.
being the first one just because of that first winter and bringing me and the friends together. But the other one, it opened up new worlds and it helped foster and blossom a love for a fandom that I still have to this day.
Yeah, I have played the spiritual successor. I think it was made by a couple of the original guys. The Star. Star Trek Bridge Crew, the one that was on the PS4 VR.
Yes, and I mainly brought up Star Trek Online, but there were two other kind of offshoot successors. Yeah, there's Bridge Crew, which is a built mainly for VR, but I believe at least one version of it. I forget if it's the PS4 or one of the PC versions because I think it's technically on more than one storefront. It can be played without it, and that does cover some of the aspects
Mm-hmm.
of it. And then there was also made by, or at least published by Bethesda, Star Trek Legacy, which in its time was a decent game. It kind of the general consensus when it came out was that it was a little bit rushed. It's looked on a bit more fondly, and it had its own mod scene, along with a lot of other Star Trek games that I didn't mention, some RTS games, turn-based games. Basically, like, if it was a game that had Star Trek on the name of it that wasn't a straight kind of storyline thing like some of the original older ones, like kind of playing with the narrative of like a episode of TV. If it was a bit more expanded than that, had any kind of aspect of there being multiplayer or you getting to have a choice of or selection of like character or weapon or whatever, they were modifying it.
Oh
If
yeah.
there's a will, there's a way for a fandom like that, and that fandom can be, for better or worse, one of the most prolific ones out there. But that could be a whole different tangent to go down for the benefits and downsides of that. But yeah, it's had some successor to it, but like I said, no one's really touched on its particular storyline, and that was kind of what made it unique. Other than the premise of it at the time, like it looked good for the time. The updates you get through a lot of the mods, which the big pack of all of it together is called the Kobayashi Maru pack, which is a play on something else from Star Trek, the Kobayashi Maru training scenario. Yeah, there's enough of it out there that I could be pretty contented with the legacy, no pun intended, that it brought on from successor games. But
Mm-hmm.
like I said, like we said before, this is offbeat. This is something that pulls on nostalgia for one reason or another, or that just sticks with us. Like I really want that game, so that's where we're going from there, and that's why I put that in there. It's like, yeah, there are bits and pieces of it out there, but it hasn't been redone, and I want it. 5 minutes ago, get on it.
Well, I think that this will be the winding down part of the podcast. Um, One other thing I will put in here is anything I named. If you guys just want to make it playable on the newest systems, I'm fine with that too. Um,
Yeah, same here. Like a
at
bigger
least easier to
repository.
play, because some of this shit's like nearly impossible to find. You had there for a while that like EA games were not available because you couldn't find them on Steam if they weren't on like Origin, you were fucked. You
Yeah,
could not find that game at all like on PC or anything. You get like Alice Madness Returns, very expensive game to try to find. Can't even find it on PC anymore at all. So just stuff like that. Some of these, like Army of Men RTS is expensive when you go to find it. Every Fatal Frame is expensive. You know, some of these just like even if you have like a Fatal Frame anthology, don't even remake them. Just bring them straight over. Perfectly fine with that.
and we're not going to officially suggest endorsing like pirating games or using emulators, but it, so at some point, doing things like that becomes an unfortunate, almost a necessity based on the cost and general barriers other than cost to getting into some of them. Because
Mm-hmm.
there are games that we haven't talked about. There's games on consoles that we have talked about that just haven't come up tonight. We might do a second version of this where we talk on some more of them. It sometimes with some games like Fatal Fury, like if you want to play it, you basically got to source a copy of it, source a Japanese Wii U since it's region locked, and I don't think anyone's fully cracked the regioning on a Wii U. If they have, who knows how well that would work? Like, hopefully good, but I mean, testing and trying to get things right. Like, there's a barrier to cost, and there's a barrier to just the general practicality of it.
Mm-hmm.
The older a game gets, the lesser the amount of copies there are out there, at least usable copies, whether it's disc rot, chip failure in cartridge games, just a general lack of not that many of them being out there to begin with, or more and more people pitching older games, whether they unfortunately throw them into the trash, or you have a lot of donations to thrift stores that end up eventually going to trash because people miss them or don't pick them up. Which, yes, a lot of people are out there scouring thrift stores for video game stuff, ourselves included. But there's shit that falls through the cracks. There's some
Mm-hmm.
stuff that you look at in hindsight. It's like, you know, to preserve it and to collect it, like, yeah, I probably should have picked that up. But realistically, like, we also think like it wouldn't have been worth it, and unfortunately, a lot of games fall through the cracks like that. And whether they're obscure or popular, again, as time goes on, becomes hard to play. The very least that we would like to see is that if we have a copy or can get a hold of a copy of any of them that are disc based, it'd be nice to be able to pop them in the successor console and be able to have at least a good chance of them working.
Mm-hmm.
And both of the major players are working, not to discredit Nintendo, but they don't have a disc-based console right now that's an active console. Both of the main two, i.e., Nintendo, yeah, Sony and Microsoft, they have backwards compatibility. It's patchy at best, and we can have an argument over which one is better for certain things and which one isn't, because we'd probably both be bouncing back and forth on each other and
Mm-hmm.
know who to give a even somewhat clear victory to. And we both know it's not going to be full on perfect unless some miracle worker comes out of the woodwork and hands them some amazing source code for being able to do emulation and compatibility modes. But it would be nice in general to see a lot more of these games become available to play readily on newer systems.
That's the big thing for me. I mean, I've got vinyl records. I've got media that's twice my age, older than my parents, kind of thing. But for me, it's gonna be okay. I've got a copy of one of my favorite games of all time, Need for Speed Underground 2. Yes, I have a stack of PS2s, but in 30 years from now, we're gonna have the NES thing, where it's gonna be harder to find the system than it is the game. The game can still be preserved on my shelf forever. It'll last hundreds of years,
If
granted, the world ending, shit like that. But the systems are going to have moving parts in them. They're going to fail out a lot more. That's the main reason why we need them on newer systems, because just to kind of like revitalize them a little bit so that we
right.
don't have to pirate everything.
I mean, yeah, the media that the game is on, as I alluded to, like it can have issues, but
Mm
as time goes on, every bit and piece of the whole system is going to start to degrade. The console, controllers, potentially with the change that there have been, compatible like screens to play it on, for lack of a better term, whether it be monitors, televisions, what have you, just
hmm.
because of connection hookups. And yes, obviously people have worked ways around that. which also helps being able to stream the videos and stuff like that, frame meisters and the like.
I mean, both of
But
us have
there's
old
some,
dinosaur TVs in the closet, but
yeah,
30
but
years from now,
there's
those
some that
things
get
might just turn into sand. Like, you know what I mean?
right, and there are some consoles, or at least some models of some consoles, that kind of get left in the dust, and they're extremely, extremely prolific modded communities for a lot of those consoles out there, but even still, like we're falling behind. Everything it's getting older, and one, at least having one part of the equation being newer would help the longevity of keeping those games out there. And of course,
Right.
pretty much every fucking game that comes out gets digitized in one way, shape, or form pretty quickly, and that's great for preserving it in general. But you know, within reason, it wouldn't be the same as playing it on original hardware. But there are shades of gray too, and this is gonna be a whole other debate of how to play games and stuff, whether PC, console, hybrid, handheld. There's some bits and pieces of it that even if it isn't the right console, just the general feeling of being on a console, sitting in front of the TV, even if your PC is hooked up to a TV too, like there's some psychological thing that hits with certain people, for better or worse. Same thing with the PC side of it, just to keep it in a short thing, like having the option to be able to play the original media, what having the option to play the games in general in this day and age.
Yeah.
It's something to for the one and for the games that we have gotten. It's to be thankful for the games we want to see. It's to be cautiously hopeful for. So if you see discussions about it, whether it's AMAs, Twitter questions that come up that get a little bit of traction, and then maybe a couple days to a week or so later, you see someone post a YouTube video, or you see something on like a gaming Snapchat video, like episode. If there's something that interests you as far as remakes are concerned, join in getting traction in it. Message someone. You send a letter out there, call, text, tweet.
Right. Right.
Let your voice be heard that you want to see something like that. Get the companies interested. Get more sway from the workers and the authority that be over it.
If you guys want to see a good example of that, Google this little game coming out in September called Tony Hawk 1 and 2 Remake. That's literally how this game happened. Was people yelling and screaming and bitching about it enough literally got it made, because they did not want to sign another contract with Tony Hawk at all. Like, it was all hellfire and brimstone, and literally their door got pushed over with notes about it and everything like that. So they just caved in, and it's happening now. So,
If you happen to think that that game's not out yet, so if you happen to think that's not good enough for you and you want to see a game or series that fought long and hard or something like that and did come out, look no further than a series called Shenmue 1, 2, and 3.
yeah.
People fought for years to get the Shenmue series back up and going after the second game. And through pure force of will, they managed to convince Sega to release the IP basically completely to Yu Suzuki, and for Yu Suzuki to basically form up YesNet and start making the game. And even Sega started playing ball with the original two and made the remasters for them. Now, is everything perfect? Do they all correlate together? Not quite as far as safe data transfer, but semantics at that point. The
Mm-hmm.
series is alive again thanks to the persistence of fans. If there's anything you take away from this other than this being another psychotic rant by mainly me, you are fairly concise. It's that the fandoms, the nostalgia, don't look at it just with rose-tinted glasses and think, oh, I'm beyond that, no one will care. Especially in the video game industry,
Yeah.
history repeats itself. Things come back around and around and around. There are games that have gotten enough remakes, remasters, and ports over to other systems. Here's looking at you, Skyrim and GTA 5. That the whole damn system is a lazy Susan that just keeps spinning back and forth. If you go with it long enough, it's going to come back around.
We're going to have another age of 3D platformers.
We're already kind of in it.
Yeah, it's starting to pick up, but yeah, there's going to be another resurgence of that. There's going to be another resurgence of like AAA big time side scrollers. Like it's all going to come back. It's going to go in and out. First person shooters and open world third person is going to die back a little bit, and then something else going to jump up, and yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, we're seeing a resurgence with RTS as well, and not for nothing, like, some people have some complaints about it. I don't, and obviously you don't. Since we're
Right.
basically talking a video condoning it.
We need more RTSs on console.
The remaster remake craze is not a craze. It's just something that at this point is a nice fact of life and a nice added bonus and hype train for, again, maybe progressing series, but maybe just giving someone a dose of something and letting them move on. I'm kind of hoping in some ways that we start to see some more. We're kind of getting it with the extreme sports of the Tony Hawk games and stuff. Like, I'm hoping we see some more classic, maybe some off the wall or not so off the wall, but still classic sports games and puzzle games and things that weren't the bread and butter and becoming the bread and butter back in the day, like platformers and the shooters. Not that I don't want to see them, but I'm hoping to see more of the other ones get more love. I want to see it all, and I want to see it now.
Right.
Might not be anything less than everything to ask for, but I'm the captain, I'm making it in order, and yeah, that's what I want.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, I think that was a very successful rant about a bunch of things. By all means, if you guys out there have any ideas on anything you want to hear about, want to talk with us about, anything like that, just let us know. We've got way more ideas than we rightfully should about different things, so there's going to be other videos coming up. Got some other ideas floating around in our head. Some of them going to take a little bit more work than others. We like to have visual aids for some of the stuff, because what the hell is ranting going to do when you can't see what we're talking about, you know?
Yeah. I mean, by all means, like, I know, honestly, right now, breaking the fourth wall, there ain't that many people listening to us at this point. Hopefully this might be the one that finally blows this channel up, but
I know there's at least 2 people listening right now, because I can hear it just fine.
Well, other than us, and I guess we could add in the voices in our heads, like, if anyone...
And probably the FBI, too. They're probably listening in.
Yeah, if FBI agents or a few buddies or any random people do, again, like you said, have any ideas or want to join in or whatever, message us. Just throw it against the walls. Let's see what sticks. Let's see what we can do. We're down for a good time for a conversation about stuff, even if we can't get it recording right. Like, it took us rightfully longer tonight to get this going than it should have. Maybe we'll finally get it figured out in about 7-8 years, but...
Yeah, right.
We're going to have those pains in the ass. We're going to be your pains in the ass. And I'm going to hand it back to you for your final outro.
Well, I guess all I can really say is, if this video interested you or pissed you off or offended you or anything like that, Go ahead and share it. Piss off other people. That's fine. I'm just looking for views. I don't care if you're pissed off or not.
Like, subscribe, comment, report us to the FBI, CIA, FAA.
They already have both of our names anyways, so they'll just hang up on you at that point. They're gonna get tired of it.
Basically, be a tally mark which alphabet soup wants us next.
Right. All right. Well, thank you for listening in, and we will be back to bug you again shortly.